So let's start from the name, Swelter Coffee. I'm like really curious to where the name's origin started, and I guess the origin of Swelter Coffee.
Yeah, it's well, the name there isn't really a great fantastical story behind it. It is basically my name.
Okay.
My maiden last name is Welter.
Mm-hmm.
And I went by S. Welter for, lots of, that's just sort of the shorthand I've used.
Gotcha.
And when I first started home roasting about almost roughly 10 years ago. And so when I'd give friends and family coffee, a few of them just called it Swelter Coffee.
There you go.
I know when I decided to turn this into a thing, I just couldn't think of anything more meaningful. I mean, not that Swelter is super meaningful, but it was already kind of in place, and I couldn't think of anything that would be more meaningful without trying to create some great story behind it. So I just stuck with that for now. And it seems like it's just going to stick.
No, that sounds like it makes it more personable. It's more intimate that way versus like something more catchy and punny. So.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I do like hearing people's sort of origin stories, or like the thinking they put behind the name. Mm-hmm. So that was really sticking to me. Like if I couldn't think of like anything more potent or meaningful to me, then I'll just stick with my name.
Yeah.
And then people think it's funny because sweltering hot, and they're like, "Oh, is it because the coffee roasters gets really hot?" I'm like, "No, it's just my name."
You should just piggyback off of it. Be like, "Yeah, that's exactly why I named it that way."
Yeah.
So you started with home roasting. What brought you into home roasting from the beginning?
Yeah, so right into the origin story. So basically, I'm like almost a lifelong coffee drinker. Mm-hmm. I started at a young teenage age. I didn't start before but in teenage years, I remember drinking coffee, and I grew up in the Northwest. So all as teenagers would go to the coffee houses and stuff, because mm-hmm. that was sort of, the coffee culture was just kind of pretty prominent in the Northwest. And so I always just loved going to coffee houses. So I've been a coffee drinker all my life. And then as I've gotten, I've also just been somewhat of a maker, or like someone who likes to try to make things, mm-hmm. Specifically food related. So I make cheese, I make bread, I'm not necessarily great at any of it. I just like to do it. So, like for a long time, I made my own yogurt, partly for environmental reasons, but so anyway, I stumbled upon a book from James from Blue Bottle way about 10 years ago. And he had this little insert, like a 2 pages, where it walked you through how to roast coffee at home. And I was just like, what the heck? I've never done this before. Why haven't I done this before? I went out and I figured out where to buy green coffee and started buying it and started in my oven, and I was hooked. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was a diehard dark roast coffee drinker. Mm-hmm. And so initially, and I lived in a tiny apartment in Oakland, smoking out in my kitchen every time I'm trying to roast, because you have to I used a perforated sheet. So you stick it in, you have to shake it every 30 seconds or so that you agitate the beans, because otherwise they just kind of scorch on one side.
Right.
And so, all that exhaust and smoke makes your definitely decreases the air quality inside of an apartment without ventilation. But yeah, so, and just sort of exploring how to do it at home and where I would buy it. I could just buy a pound or 2 from different origins. And I just really got into trying out a ton of different origins and just having fun with it. And I just slowly, not super slowly, somewhat slowly, got lighter and lighter, just because I just couldn't get a really dark roast in my oven. And then I just started developing a taste for the lighter roast and started really appreciating all the nuances and different flavors. So I was sort of like a happenstance,
Mm.
third wave specialty coffee drinker.
Yeah.
And now I can't do the super dark roast
Mm-hmm.
anymore. It like literally upsets my stomach. Um, so yeah, so I just kind of had fun with it. And so I would just do it for fun, and I'd roast for my office. I'd roast for friends and family, for many years. I quickly graduated to a home roaster. So I got a Be More about, I guess, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, which basically looks like a little oven that you
Mm-hmm.
put on your counter, and I'd roast, about a quarter of a pound at a time, or three-quarters of a pound at a time, and spend my whole Saturday doing batch after batch after batch, trying to get enough to like give to everybody I wanted to give it to.
No.
Um, and then soon thereafter, I heard through the grapevine that there was a co-roasting space opening up in Berkeley. And
Mm.
so I jumped in on that and started roasting there on their 1 pound sample roaster,
Okay.
a San Franciscan. And so I was on that thing for many, many years. I'd go like on my lunch break, because it wasn't far from where I worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go and roast for an hour, do a couple batches, come back. And it was way more efficient than in my kitchen. So yeah, I just really loved the process, and then learning more about origin, processing, all
Mm-hmm.
those things. I just sort of fell in love with it.
So when you explored home roasting to being able to work on the sample roaster, when did it start to click that you wanted to own your own shop?
Um, it was sort of like a fantasy for a while. It was like, oh, maybe this will turn into something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it was when I actually started getting serious thinking about it. It was actually after I had my daughter. She's 5 now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was like, we don't need another coffee roaster in this world. There's so many, especially in the Bay Area in California. There's just so many, and there's so many great ones. So many around, really tasty coffee roasters, different folks trying to do different things, good things, etc. So I was like, I don't know, if I'm going to do this, I have to have a point of view. It has to mean something to me, and it has to mean something to the world. So, I was actually in my previous life, which is still active. I'm a designer, and I design a lot of stuff around messaging and strategy around more sustainable stuff. And so I was at a talk with Paul Hawken, who started Project Drawdown, which is a really great organization that does a lot of data and calculations on how to achieve drawdown using accessible technologies in the world. And so they do all the research, they rank things. So, and I was at a talk, and at the time, one of the top ranking things to achieve drawdown to curb basically global warming was to support women farmers.
Mm.
And like, that's when this light bulb in my head went off. I was like, well, there's women coffee farmers. Maybe that could be like a focus. And I had just had my daughter as sort of like this newfound, somewhat feminist outlook
Right.
on like gender equity and everything is sort of bubbling up, very fresh, having gone through the whole birthing process and kind of learning about a lot of stuff. It's just like compounded. And it's like, oh, well, I could really get behind that. I could
Mm-hmm.
really get behind figuring out ways to support, or like just supporting women from a sustainability standpoint. I mean, the data they were talking about is more or less small shareholders worldwide in agriculture, supporting small shareholders, women farmers
Is there a reason why?
worldwide is what. Yeah, it has to do with. It basically has to do with access
Mm.
and sorry, what's the word? Volume. So, for example, women just, globally, especially in third, second world countries, don't have the same access to owning land, education, resources, financing, and so their yields don't tend to match that of men. However, they do do a lot of the work. So the idea is, if you invest in those farmers so that their yields can increase and match, everyone else's, quote unquote, then you can produce more food for the world without having to deforest more land. And they were able to like calculate and measure it and actually have, so it's like as a way to invest in things that will, support populations without degrading more. Oh, it's really loud out there. You can't hear it?
No, I can't. So we're good.
Wow. I can barely hear myself. It's like they're literally.
You're speaking into a void.
Like they're literally got the leaf blower right outside my door. So anyway, yeah, that's the gist. That's the gist of why supporting women farmers was just one of the top ones at the time. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to do a coffee brand and start my own thing, that's going to be the first thing, is like figure out ways to support women producers in whatever way I can. And so diving into that, I really didn't know how to gain information about what producers were paid and all that stuff. So it was sort of like diving into all of that, like understanding better how much they make, and then learning all the things about how, producers can't even support themselves, and they're all in poverty because of the, the commodity pricing and all this stuff. That was it. And then I was like, okay. So then I just started thinking about like, how do I build the brand around this? I started seeing if I could actually buy coffee from women producers through the resource that I had. And that was really hard. And then I found one that made it a little bit easier to find, because traceability is a really hard component of it. Especially when you're working with importers and stuff. And when you're a really small roaster, you have to, you can't even fathom doing anything direct. You have to go through importers and such. So then just seeing like, well, what can I get my hands on? So
right.
I started finding some women producers that I could buy really small volumes, and just slowly sort of dabbled and did it, and was starting to plan my departure from my day job and figuring out how I would do that. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do it now. Everything's on hold. Yeah. I was trying to I had been planning my departure, or just more to leave it, because I was trying to do all of this while I had a full-time job and while I had a very small child at home.
Which is another full-time job.
Quickly realized that's just not a recipe for happiness. So that's when I realized, okay, if I'm going to actually give this a go, I'm going to have to let go of my secure full-time job, that only thing I've ever known for most of my adult life, and go into the deep end of entrepreneurship. And, but I don't know, I just had the part of me was like, I got to give this a go. I got to try it out. I got to see if I can make this into something. And so, it delayed a few months because of COVID, but it sort of quickly turned into like, you can't put this off anymore. You just have to do it.
Take the bullet.
So, yeah, exactly. So that's what I did in the summer 2020 is when it basically became more official that yes, I'm doing this. So
I love that, because it seems like there's a lot of the pandemic from different also episodes. We've had a few people on the show who have also opened shops during the pandemic. And I'm happy that both, and yours included, have made it and pulled through that like hard, rocky road that it probably gave you. But it seems like the pandemic really sprung a lot of entrepreneurial ideas for a lot of people, especially in the coffee world. So
yeah, I think maybe part of it too is like, it really comes to your drive and your passion in there. And when things are unstable outside, it's like, well, you kind of you're more likely to go with either I have to do this because there's something in me making me do it,
Right.
or you have that fear. It's like, no, I can't take the risk. And then you stay where it's like it
Mm-hmm.
pulls you into those extremes, maybe. I don't know. That's just one theory that,
Yeah.
and then maybe the folks who actually take the plunge are more willing to ride the ride. And as scary and unpredictable and unsure as it is. So I don't know. I don't think I've pulled through yet. I'm still I'm still growing. It's still not I'm not profitable or anything like that. So, I think that takes time,
Mm-hmm.
but I've had really good luck. I've met some amazing people,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm happier than I've ever been. So
That's
I
great.
think something in there is right. I'm not making any money, but I'm happier than I
Yeah.
was when I had my secure job. So that's something, right?
Yeah, no, I think that in general the coffee industry always just produces like a really great sense of community. And then of course
Mm-hmm.
working with the producers, it's a very humbling experience to be able to affect other people's lives just based off
Mm-hmm.
of a product. So,
Right, right. Yeah, I really hope to strengthen that side of it more as
mm-hmm.
my business grows. I've really just barely dabbled in the connections with producers. I'm really excited I'm going to be getting my hands on some beans from some producers who I have met. I have been to their house and I have
Wow.
hung out with them in the next couple of months. And so that just feels really amazing that I can see those connections.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other folks that I've met that I'll be uh, showcasing their beans. Like one of them also is Ruth from Artisan. I'm going to
Love
get some of
her.
their coffee in, which I'm really excited to
Mm-hmm.
support and to celebrate the work they're doing
Yeah.
and the women they work with.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then right now I've got coffee from Mighty Peace, and that's been a really exciting
Yeah.
from the folks in the Congo. That was always been just really exciting to be able to share what they're doing with my
Mm-hmm.
customers and such. So stuff like that. Yeah, it is pretty amazing. It just adds a little bit of depth, a lot of depth to
Yeah.
what we're doing with this beverage that we just love to drink every day, you
Yeah.
know?
You're creating stories, which ties
Mm-hmm.
the entire experience together.
I see it more as sharing stories because those stories are there.
Right.
Like they're around the world. It's like how do we better connect with them so that us here in privileged first world countries can have a better, deeper appreciation to what actually goes into all the things that we love to consume and enjoy every
Mm-hmm.
day. It's a huge privilege to have that, and most of us just sort of go through every day and just sort of enjoy it or not even think about it, just totally take advantage.
Right.
And so I see coffee as a great opportunity to start breaking some of that down and
Mm-hmm.
understanding better where that comes from and why it's important, why it's been so important for so
Mm-hmm.
many years. So,
So working with women, is it mostly women owned and women produced, or is it just women produced?
um, I don't have that much detail for everything else. So, for example, some of the coffees I get are from a co-op.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a women's co-op. I don't know. I don't know who all really owns the land, but through my sources, they're produced and run by women. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that qualifies
Yeah. No.
to support their work
Totally.
and things like that. Yeah.
So are you also interested in gender equity? I think I like like snooped on your website and saw gender equity kind of mentioned, and I kind of wanted to like pick your brain on that too.
Yeah, it definitely. So my first love is more in the sustainability space. But as my adult years have gone on, I've gotten way more aware and passionate about gender equity and just equity in general. Just, I mean, it's hard to decouple it from just about everything, but gender equity is such a huge component, and it runs so deep and so for so long,
Right.
in so many different cultures, and it's so varied, yet at the core very similar in lots of cultures. So yeah, and I have to say it's something I was aware of before, and somewhat paid attention to, but having a daughter has really, really amplified my attention, my heightened sensitivity to it, and acknowledge, like being able to see it, just the layers of sort of prejudice and injustice and sort of things that are ingrained in everything that we do. Sort of the more you pay attention to it, the more you see it everywhere.
Right.
That's kind of, so yeah, that's sort of been a big part of it.
Where do you want Swelter Coffee to go? Like, what trajectory do you see it kind of like hopefully following?
But yeah, as far as having a company that has a positive impact, it's extending further into being a coffee brand and a product that can offer something to consumers that is a better choice or a better option. So in the environmental space that I've worked in, it's really, I get really frustrated that, everything lands on the customer, or the consumer has to figure out how to deal with it. You have to figure out how to deal with your waste. You have to figure out how to recycle. You have to figure out how to make better choices and compare all the things of like, well, as a brand, as a company, I want to put something out there that is easier for customers to make this decision. So that's really what inspired the Zero Waste Coffee Club, is like, I can't find a packaging solution for my coffee that I feel good about, that I feel, is making the world a better place. Because all it is more waste and using it more energy. And I didn't see anyone else doing that. So I was like, well, I'll just try to figure this out on my own. So I started with just like a handful of friends who were subscribers, and tested out like, okay, if I mail the coffee to you on this container, will you mail it back to me, kind of thing. And I had a pretty good response. And then, so I eventually launched it for anyone to join about a year and a half ago. And it's been it's not huge still, because I haven't really done any aggressive marketing or anything, because I still feel like it's a pilot phase. But it's been my fastest growing product. And I've gotten pretty good feedback with the system. People just feeling really good that they're getting their coffee. The coffee is impactful because it's all produced by women, and trying to support smaller shareholders, et cetera. But then there's no packaging waste in it as well. So basically, folks who are that join, they receive the coffee in a reusable container. Right now I use silicone bags, kind of like Stasher bags, but I don't use the Stasher brand. I use a different brand. They receive that in a reusable mailer. And basically once they get the coffee in the mail, they pour it into a jar, or they can opt in where they get a canister at the beginning of their subscription, and they refill their container, and then they put everything back in the same mailer, flip the return label over, and then drop it at USPS, and it comes back to me. And then I wash everything and kind of do the same thing.
That's
and it's
amazing.
and it's on a
Wow.
4-week cadence, trying to like, you know, it's because I've, in my testing, the coffee, it stays pretty good for at least a month if you store it well. So I try to
Mm-hmm.
educate folks, okay, store it in an airtight container, keep it out of the sun, that kind of stuff. Um, and so then you only need delivery once I do every 4 weeks, only because I roast every other week. So it's like every other, it
Yeah.
just fits my roast. It just fits my schedule right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the volumes are higher. So people can get from 1 to 4 pounds every 4 weeks if they want. Um, and yeah, it's as simple as that. The technical difficulties is the containers, so sometimes they don't seal because it was never made for that, being mailed across the world, the country. So they don't seal. So sometimes they spill in the bag, which I just use additional clips for that. So I'm looking into getting custom bags made for this so that that's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, yeah, people have been pretty pleased with the product. And like I said, it's been the fastest growing product that I offer. People just will
Mm-hmm.
sign up for it. So it's been a pretty fun journey, just sort of exploring that. But yeah,
It seems like you say that you do a lot of marketing for sustainability and you said climate change.
uh, it's all sort of related. Yeah, yeah.
So,
I didn't do marketing. I would did like design work
oh,
for
okay.
companies and corporations, corporate reporting, or smaller companies and nonprofits that have more sustainable minded
Mm-hmm.
products or industries, et cetera.
Seems like that background and then this idea as itself, it's pretty innovative. And I think that, do you have more projects in the future of this trajectory line that we're painting for Swelter Coffee? We're going to manifest this to happen. Along this rhythm, do you have future projects that you would love to start implementing for Swelter Coffee in terms of obviously supporting that sustainability being a huge part of
Hmm.
your brand and legacy?
Yeah. Nothing else so far. I'm still pretty swallowed up by figuring out this circular packaging system.
Mm-hmm.
And just and making improvements with that. Like, I think there's still a lot of improvements that need to be made before I really push it to grow bigger. But um, I think just kind of sticking to those things is really creating a product that really I feel good about putting out in the world, and then supporting folks who I want to support in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the producers and their communities.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting deeper into those things, I think, is where my passion is right now. Um, it's because it can be so complex. And just trying to do it well, trying to grow this thing in a sustainable manner.
Right.
Um, and then eventually, if I grow large enough to have a team, within my company, it'll extend to how do we operate
Mm-hmm.
in, where is our energy coming from? How do we run our facility? Things like that. I mean, I'm just going to have an eye towards that naturally because that's just kind of how I operate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all learning because I don't have any formal education in a lot of this stuff. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of learning as you go and talking to lots of people and doing research and all of that. And you also always have to be willing to pivot and
Mm-hmm.
sort of reevaluate what you thought you knew. Because
Yeah.
that's another thing is like, there's always more to learn. There's always more analyses. There's always people doing really interesting research
Mm-hmm.
and reporting on things. And you have to just be always open to how that might influence how you approach something and how you might need to change that so that it still fits within your ethos or your values,
Mm-hmm.
from the sustainability and an equitable approach.
Yeah.
So
So you started off home roasting. You're growing Swelter Coffee. How has it been integrating into the coffee community? Like, have you been going to SCA driven events, or have you, obviously the Bay Area has a lot of coffee roasters, so I'm guessing, do you kind of like all meet up and kind of mingle and like exchange it? I don't know. I'm just more curious.
No. Yeah, I should do more. I am more so an introvert when it comes to that. I'm very intimidated by coffee people.
Yeah, it's okay. I get it.
Um,
Trust me.
so I haven't, I mean, I've been trying to get myself out there, and then also diving into this while it was during COVID and stuff. So there wasn't a lot going on to go to, but I did go to I went to the SCA Expo in April.
Yeah.
Was it April? Yeah, it was April. So that was the first sort of big event I did for that. I haven't done it really much locally. I roast here at a co-roasting space. So I try to do some of their events when I can, but I also have a young kid and a family. So, you know, that's my top priority is that type of stuff. But yeah, as I get into it, I just try to do more, and I tend to definitely resonate more with coffee related things that have the initiative or the that are kind of tackling these types of things that resonate with me. And then I find that I can find people there that I connect with. So for example, last summer I went to the Women Powered Coffee Summit held by Bean Voyage in Costa Rica. And that was sort of really me going out on a limb, being like, I don't feel like I belong here, but I feel like I should go. This is exactly the type of stuff I want to support. So I went, and I couldn't really talk to anyone because everyone spoke Spanish, but they did a really good job. They actually did a fabulous job translating all the, because we had little individual ear things, recorders where they had a translator. So all the presentations were predominantly done in Spanish, but they translated for the few of us who couldn't speak or understand Spanish, and it was really amazing. But I met some really amazing people. Amaris was one of them who I met there last year from Joe Coffee. And then a few other folks who, and now I'm the coffee farmer that I met there is the coffee that I'm bringing in to supply for my customers through Bean Voyage. And so things like that are just really mission driven. I definitely try to jump on those types of events and connections. And at SCA, there was a few extracurricular events that were more mission driven. And I definitely got a lot of value out of those and met some really wonderful people there. So I feel like it's been slow for me just because I kind of need it to be. I'm not much of an extrovert. So, and I get really intimidated by people. So it's like, I don't necessarily put myself out there as much as I should probably. But yeah, slowly but surely.
Yeah. I would love to hear more about your experience at the Women's Summit.
Yeah, and they have another one I don't know if you've heard about it, but they're having another one this fall in November. So I plan on going to that.
In Costa Rica again?
Okay.
I
think, it's at the same venue outside of San Jose. And so I need to learn some Spanish before I go. Yeah, it was really cool. It was it's an attempt to connect producers with more industry folk. And what I think they're doing that's very different. And again, I'm new to the industry, so I didn't really know that this just wasn't a thing, but it's putting on these events to support and gain access for producers primarily.
Right.
But I think roasters and us up in sort of quote unquote Western world or first world would still get a lot out of it. Like all the presentations, maybe it doesn't relate to you 100%, but I think it just helps everyone have a better understanding of the complexity of what it means to support this industry.
Right.
And especially understanding the situations that most and many women producers find themselves in, and the challenges they face and the tools they need to succeed, um, is, I think, good for all of us to understand and be aware of. And then that way, as a brand, as like a roaster myself, I can be more intentional in how I support that and
Right.
how I talk about it. How I talk about it with consumers, how you educate consumers, all of the above. So I think it's a really interesting and powerful thing that they've started.
Yeah, I have
Mm-hmm.
heard about the Women's Summit before, and I was very
Mm-hmm.
curious about wanting to attend it, but obviously
Mm-hmm.
logistics getting there is always the hardest part.
Yeah.
How have your interactions with everybody in the industry been for you? I'm guessing, I know that you said you're more introverted. You haven't
Mm-hmm.
hopefully had negative occurrences, have you?
Um, I wouldn't say negative, but I definitely would say I don't always feel comfortable
Yeah.
in the space of coffee people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have any specifics, but especially like being peripheral for so many years. Like I would go to the co-roasting space and go do my thing, go roast on the sample roaster. And just, I wasn't in the industry. So I wouldn't say people were outright mean, but they weren't overly friendly. They definitely were not friendly. Um, and I feel like that's changing, especially one thing I've noticed that because of being someone who is interested in the whole craft of coffee roasting and all of that, um, I've been seeking out information
Yeah.
and things to learn, et cetera, over the years. And earlier on, when I first started, the first couple of years that I started roasting coffee, I just couldn't find anything out there. Like there just wasn't resources out there. There are videos. Now there's a ton of videos. There's lots of people doing education and stuff like that around it. Whereas I felt like back then there really wasn't. So it seems like the openness to share is growing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's good. So that's why I think my initial um, approach or reaction was like, okay, this is a, closed club.
Mm-hmm.
At least that was my impression. And so it just felt intimidating. So I never really approached people. I didn't ask questions. I just tried to learn on my own. Um, and the folks that I would encounter, they didn't seem very interested in sharing with me. Um, but I think that's changed. It seems like the industry is more and people are more open to sharing. And
Do you have any interest in advancing outside of roasting? Since you're interested in a lot of sustainability, I guess like economic development or other things.
yeah, so um, yeah, there's a project I'm working on with uh, Amaris and another woman we met at, who you should also talk to. I'll email you her contact info. um, that that were started. Um, I feel like both of them are a lot more eloquent to talk about the project, but it has to do with. I know, like I could sit and listen to Amaris talk all day. She's very intelligent, and such a wonderful tone. But it has to do with how do I sum it up? Equitable quality information around um, coffee quality. So it's like, how do you share? How do you judge? How do you decide? Um, who decides the quality of the coffee? Is it us up here in the global north that are roasting it and selling it and then telling everyone else what the quality is, or should it be the farmers on the farm?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you share that information more equitable together as a community? And then how do we enable, how does the industry enable folks at Origin to have the confidence to judge their own coffee and stand up for, you know, what they feel the value should be and the quality should be, or the quality is, versus the other way around where, you know, they're very just like sending it out there, be like, okay, people tell me what, you know, what's the coffee score? What's the number? And, oh, well, these people said this and those people said that. What is it? You know, and it's just like, farmers they should be able to do that themselves, and have the tools and the confidence to make those decisions themselves, and to take what we say in conjunction with what they understand, versus, you know, take what we say and be like, okay, that's the price point, you know, or whatever, based on some arbitrary, it's not arbitrary, but you know, based on some number that they don't understand. So the organization that we're starting tries to grapple with a lot of that and create an exchange where it encourages that dialogue and collaboration,
Yeah.
you know, across the world.
Yeah, that's great.
So it isn't necessarily Swelter specific, but it's me.
Yeah, it's whatever
you're
you're
about something.
Yeah.
And starting something that just feels right and feels like, okay, let's do this. Finding people that you work really well with and have a passion for it. So
Yeah. I think she had mentioned it briefly in her episode as well, that was something that she was interested in exploring more too.
yeah.
It's a pleasant surprise that you're also involved.
Yes, I'm also involved. And again, I'll let her do this. Her and Giselle do the speaking about it, because they're both way more eloquent.
No, you're doing fine.
But yeah, it's a really great thing. Like, I feel really excited to be able to be a part of it and working with them on this, and the potential of, you know, we've done some focus groups and talked to a handful of people about it, and just had really great feedback. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that sounds
so
great.
We'll do an episode on that project in the future.
I don't usually have a lot of chances to talk to mothers who work in the coffee industry. How has being a full-time mom and balancing the work life of your coffee like business been?
Hard. Yeah.
Because it's two very big investments.
Yeah. And you asked before, like, what could be another thing that I might focus on. I would say that might be a huge theme through growing this business. And especially as I grow and employ people, that work-life balance and being able to support people and their families will be huge.
Are you talking specifically for like the producing countries, or like your staff?
Staff.
Okay.
I think it would be more staff. And producing, I mean, I would definitely be game to figuring out, because I know that's a huge part of issue. I mean, it's an issue globally with, like, what do you do with childcare? You know, when you are, and especially in countries that women are assumed to be the child carers.
Right.
How do you support them, and how do you create an environment where they can flourish and be the amazing employees or business owners or whatever that they can be, in addition to taking care of their family and having the family values. It shouldn't be an either or. So I think that could definitely be something that sort of flares up in my future, just because it's something I grapple with and something I see a lot of injustices in that in itself. But it's been hard, you know, especially having a young kid and trying to straddle this passion I have to grow a business, and then also wanting to be a good mom, and also feeling like I can't do either one very well. Because you know, I didn't have training for either of them. So you're just sort of trying to do your best at both and hoping that you're doing a good job at both. But I will say that partly for having a kid pushed me to do the business because that's part of what keeps me going. It's like I want to show my kid that you can go after your dreams and you can work really hard at them, and you can make something of it. Or I might have to show her that you can really go after something, decide that it's not going to work and you need to switch it. And that's okay. You know, that is first and foremost what I want her to see firsthand in a parent. Like, and so when things get really hard and I just feel like I can't do this and I shouldn't be doing this, that's try to where I take myself and be like, well, I have to do it for her. I have to keep trying for her. I can't lose hope. Cause like starting a business and starting your own thing, you know, if you don't have hope that you'll work through it all, you're doomed. You don't have all the answers, but you have to have hope that you'll get there, or you'll figure it out, or you'll meet the right person, or you'll hear the right thing so that you can solve this problem or that problem, or get over that hurdle. And so that's kind of where I try to take my brain, is like, well, I got to show her that I can do this. And I also have to show her that it's really hard. It's really fucking hard. Excuse my language.
Oh, you're fine.
That, you know, it takes a lot of hard work and sacrifice as well. And I don't know if she'll want to be an entrepreneur or whatever, but whatever she decides to do with her life, I just want to show her that you can have passion and you can have drive and you can do all the things and you can love it. You don't have to give anything up.
Sounds like you're verbally speaking a love letter to your daughter right now. It's beautiful to listen to.
I think so. No, I mean, she has been, I mean, motherhood just, you know, on another level has just been really hard for me. But
yeah.
I've also found a huge amount of what's it called? Maybe it's that drive or that passion. Strength. Yes. Thank you. That's a good one. I've found a huge amount of strength.
Yeah.
Just kind of having that. I mean, of course, throwing a kid in the mix of trying to build a business makes everything harder, but it's almost like you need that to do it. Like I couldn't do it on my own for some reason, even though I thought about it for many years. I didn't have the courage, but now that I had a kid, I was like, well, it's either now or never.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were explaining before about balancing between that leap of like the unknown into that faith-driven like hope that this will pull through and be what it is hopefully meant to be, or you stay in a system where you're constantly working that 9 to 5 or whatever that job is that's bringing you that financial stability, and you just sit and wonder. And I think that that plagues the mind. I don't think that's a healthy way to live. So I think that you taking the big leap and a lot of what you're trying to build for Swelter too, I think it's really innovative. And I like the ideas that you have in place and who you're collaborating with and what you're trying to build for yourself, only being like starting from a really interesting groundwork of home roasting that I honestly have never tried to do. And don't know.
You should try it.
I feel like I'd burn my whole apartment down. I'd be like, oh, how does this work? I literally do this for a living in a bigger oven. I can't do this here. But it's like you're really like covering so many different levels of ground here that I think that once you reach that trajectory line that we're manifesting here, it'll just be implementing so many different things for when you do eventually build staff to the other sustainable projects you want to be involved with or create for Swelter. I think that there's just a lot of potential for what you're building for yourself. And I think that your daughter's going to be able to look at her mom and be like, wow, look at my mom being cool and like building stuff and doing things for the environment and for global warming. So.
Well, I think I think it's important that you should just do what you're passionate about. I don't know. Like, it's not that I want her to see and be like, isn't it cool what my mom built? It's like, oh, I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can go after the things and have an impact and have these and make these decisions. I don't have to conform to what society thinks I should be, or
Right.
what these people think I should be.
Mm-hmm.
That's more or less what I want her to see. Cause I think when I went to college and entered the workforce, like, I had like a very much more traditional, yeah, you do that 9 to 5, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, entrepreneurship, that was, totally different. Like, I didn't even know I didn't even know what it was. Or that you could start anyway. It's just like, it's just to show that, and there's nothing wrong with being in a 9 to 5 either. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. It's like, it's figuring out what's the right thing for you at the right time in your life. And that's
Yeah.
going to change as your life changes and you grow and you learn things. And it could be the other way around, where you wanted to be an entrepreneur when you're younger, but then decide, no, I want to have a 9 to 5 and work in a bigger organization. I feel like I have a better impact. I could be like, tap into my talents and my passions more in this way or that way.
Mm-hmm.
There's no wrong or way about it, but it's about doing things that's meaningful to you and trying to find that balance with what makes you human, what makes you you,
Mm-hmm.
and what you want to represent in the world. And it can be through your family, it could be through your work, it could be through the combination of the two and a few other things that you throw in there.
Sounds great. But I appreciate you being on this episode and explaining your journey and explaining about Swelter and a lot of you and your new birth of being in the industry and like kind of like paving your path.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Well, thanks for having me. It was fun to meet you, and I've been listening in on your episodes and learning more about what you're doing. It's really great. So,
Oh, thank
I
you.
wish you all the luck.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying.
No, I mean, you're paving your journey too, and so it's fantastic. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you. I will say that her whole brand is very much like she's running it all. And I have a lot of respect for her doing that and being a mom and whatever else that she's working with on that nonprofit idea, just equity in terms of coffee quality. And I think it's really amazing what she's trying to do for herself, being so kind of like me, fresh in the industry. Because obviously she started during the pandemic when she brought up Swelter, and then has been slowly growing, and then she wanted to start from the ground putting and implementing these sustainable ideas that I'm pretty sure once she has a knack for it, she'll continue to create more innovative ideas. So it's like the idea of what she's trying to do is great, and who she's working with are great people. But yeah, I think that the zero waste idea is something that could really turn into something great. I do like the educational part of her trying to inform the consumer, because I feel like a lot of the time coffee companies don't do that. They don't try to teach coffee to people. It's not very educational at all. And I think that what she's trying to do is make it so personable. I think a lot of this is a characteristic to her personality. I think that her trying to make a difference within the consumer side, along with obviously the producing and the roasting side, she's focusing primarily on educating her customers. And she starts from really small, intimate groups. The name started from a small, intimate group. What she's doing is like firsthand, like on her own. She's like doing everything on her own. And then she had an opportunity, took it, met amazing people, started a nonprofit with another person who's already started a Women in Coffee project. Like, she's on a great path towards being a successful businesswoman. And then her devotion to her daughter was beautiful to listen to. So yeah, I just like genuinely want people to help her, like bring her awareness of what she's doing to the forefront and help grow what she's trying to create for sustainability and for, obviously, I think she does want to work on a lot of economic development that Ruth was doing, and it's just great.